Herkese tekrardan merhabalar. Şimdi YGA mezunu Alin ile Earthspark International'ın başkanı olan Allison Archambault ile hepimize ilham olacak sohbetlerini dinleyeceğiz. Alin Aşım ile YGA ile tanıştığında 2020 yılındaydık. Kendisi İzmir Özel Saint Joseph Fransız Lisesi'nde okuyordu. YGA'nın Global Impact High School programlarında mezun oldu. Bir yandan da YGA'da gönüllüyken mentorluk, ekip liderliği gibi çok fazla sorumluluk aldı. Bilim Seferberliği projesiyle Anadolu'daki dezavantajlı bölgedeki çocuklara bilimi ulaştırdı. Onlara bilimin korkulacak bir şey olmadığını gösterdi. Aynı zamanda YGA Content Development ekibinde ve Twin World Science Movement'da staj yaptı. Alin şu an Harvard Üniversitesi'nde okuyor. Alin'cim hoş geldin.
Thank you, Didem. It's great to meet you today at the YGA Summit. And I want to introduce you to a very special guest that we're meeting today. Allison Archambault is the president of Earthspark International since 2010. She's a recipient of the U.S. Department of Energy's 2017 C3E International Award for her 15 years of work in clean energy. Allison has authored and co-authored the World Wildlife Fund Solar PV Atlas, Solar Energy Nature Compatible towards 100% Renewable Energy, and many other technical papers. Earthspark established Haiti's first prepaid microgrid in 2012 and expanded it to a city-sized solar-powered smart grid in 2015. She's working towards achieving its goal of 100% solar power in rural Haiti. Welcome, Allison. It's great meeting you today.
Thanks so much, Alin. I'm really happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
So, Allison, what impressed me the most about you is that you started to work on projects about climate while you were a college student. And the methodology you work on after graduating from university won the United Nations UNFCCC Momentum for Change Award for being a real-world example of what climate action looks like. So can you tell us a bit about how you came to understand that this is your passion and you want to pursue an education and career in the energy industry?
Yeah, sure. I didn't know is the answer, Alin, which I think is normal. But I was always really interested and cared a lot about the environment. I was thinking that I was going to do public health because I wanted to do something that was useful for people. But when I was a junior in college, I needed to decide what I was going to do for my senior thesis the following year. And someone told me that it was something that was going to consume a year of my life, which felt at the time a very big commitment. And they told me I should choose something that I was passionate about. And I thought, gosh, I am passionate about so many things. I like bicycles. I like food. I like people. What's the one thing I'm passionate about? And so it was 2001 at the time. And there was a newfangled thing that had just happened. And I'd heard about it, but I'd never gone there before. It was called Google. And it was supposed to be this search engine on the internet that was going to answer any question. So I was living in Paris at the time, and I went to Google, and I typed in international relations, economics, public health, because those were the three things I was formally studying. And then I also typed in environment and French, because those were two things that were sort of interests and important elements of my life. And I hit search, and I was like, all right, what will this newfangled internet thing tell me I am truly passionate about? And the search came back with solar cook stoves in Mali. I was like, okay, well, I suppose I am passionate about solar cook stoves in Mali that sort of like concentrate the sun and cook things. I'll learn about them. And so I started clicking through and learning about solar cook stoves in Mali. And I realized I wasn't actually totally passionate about solar cook stoves in Mali. But in doing that research, I came across an article about a project that was rural solar electrification in Mali. So basically getting solar panels out to super far away places, and getting electricity there for the first time. And that seemed really interesting. So I started clicking on more articles about things like that, and that became my senior thesis. And so I got really into the institutional politics of rural solar electrification in Mali, because of a Google search, really, but because of, I had to figure out one step forward and then just keep stepping down that path to figure out what it really was. And I'll say that was very sort of aligned with what I'm currently doing, and it hasn't been a direct path. But if we can go to the next slide, I'm currently building electricity systems in rural Haiti 20 years later. So I sort of took a sidestep into clean tech for a while, and now I'm getting to do clean tech in places where we're bringing electricity to people for the first time. And I will say that when you're doing something for the first time, you get to sort of define with your team and with your counterparties how it looks. So the feminist electrification aspect of what we do, next slide, is really authentically working with women in all aspects of what we do. So we build infrastructure. So we have women at the planning table for what the infrastructure should look like, how it's sized, what needs it should serve. And I work in Haiti, but this is not a Haitian problem. It's a human problem. Women are oftentimes absent from the planning table for infrastructure projects. So it's really workforce development, it's planning, it's governance, it's the services we offer. It's basically just doing what every group should be doing, which is authentically listening to the voices of women through all aspects of what we do. So that is our view of feminist electrification. And I will say that when you're building infrastructure for the first time, the definition of who's in charge, like the face of electricity, can be female and male, because those are the people who are working on this new system. So we can grow the pie in a pretty exciting way.
Yeah, all sounds amazing. And I think what you said about like clean energy and how basically you paved your path and like you found your passion is really inspiring and helpful to young people who are watching today, because me also, I am also like a college student, so I also try to like figure out what I want to do, what are my passions. So I think it's a really inspiring story of how you found like the intersection of like different interests. So glad that you shared your story with us. And today you're actually an entrepreneur committed to providing 100% solar powered electricity to the rural parts of Haiti. And we know that behind the statistics, there are always stories. So can you tell us how electricity and solving energy access with solar energy change people's lives? How do you make it work with feminist electrification?
Yeah, sure. I mean, that's the beauty of that last slide. If we go back to the woman with the ladder, is the face of energy services in the towns where we work is female and male, but our first customer service level is female. And so this woman, Roseanne, I'll tell you, when we were first doing our first installations and turning on power, we're building an electricity grid in a town that's never had electricity before. We turn it on, we're excited, and then we get customer service call. Like, ooh, this is a customer. This is it. We're in it. And so Roseanne is in charge. She's the grid ambassador. So I was in town. I got to accompany her to her first customer service call, and she goes to the home of a very elderly man who says, "It doesn't work. Your thing doesn't work. There's no electricity in my home." Okay. Let's troubleshoot, right? So she looks around, and the way that we have the installations, there are light bulbs, and there's like a pull cord to turn on the light. Looks around, and there's no light. The man is right. She walks to the middle of the room. She pulls on the cord, and light erupts into the room. And he just hadn't been pulling on the cord hard enough, right? He is a very delicate home. Everything's very, very delicate. And he hadn't pulled on the cord. So all of a sudden he looked at her and he said, "It works. I have electricity." And he said, "Where are you from?" Because, he looked at me and I don't look like I'm from rural Haiti in that town. And she goes, I'm from this town. I'm from Les Angles. And he goes, "Where are you from?" Because, he, in his mind, there's this person, this woman who's basically invented electricity. Like, she's brought electricity to his home. And she goes, I'm from here. I'm from this like little suburb of this town. And I really love to think that, like, in that moment, two things happened for the first time. Like, that man got electricity in his home for the first time. And he also saw a woman from his community in a completely new light. So that, to me, is feminist electrification. That's the part that's most exciting, as we become, we deliver a service, but we also build a culture of competence, and that face is oftentimes female. So that's one of my favorite feminist electrification stories.
Yeah, that is amazing. And hearing about like how your project basically changed people's lives and how it affects like building a community and the culture within like a place. And I am actually curious about whether this is the case for like everywhere. So in one of your speeches, you argue that it is actually easier to build a town-sized solar-powered smart grid in rural Haiti than it is in Washington, D.C., which is where you live. And why is that the case? So can we still like see those like impacts in a modern city like Washington, or like what makes it difficult for us to go to 100% of like renewable energy in modern cities?
So the thing about it is we're all in this big story, right? Whether we're in Turkey, Haiti, or Washington, D.C., like, we are people who are consuming energy within the systems that exist and within the culture that exists. And the systems are culture, business, technology, all of these many layers of things that make up the status quo. If we can go to our next slide, we can see that the status quo for energy systems in Haiti is darkness. It's kerosene and candles. There is very little infrastructure or no infrastructure in these rural towns where my team and I work. And you can see here, you might not, I'll explain the slide, because on the left here is a white box, and we had to put the white box there because depending on your screen, sometimes you can't even see that there's a country there. You can see a little dot that's lit up, and that's Port-au-Prince, that's the capital, but there's a whole country there within that box, and it's dark at night because there's not reliable electricity. And so, next to it you see the Dominican Republic, next to that you see Puerto Rico. Just the difference between Puerto Rico and Haiti is astounding. And so when you don't have to overcome, when the incumbent is, when the status quo is darkness and you don't have to overcome an incumbent, that can make it an easier job. But it's all just a different side of the same circle. We're all in the same story, moving to energy systems that have to be 100% renewable, that have to serve people's needs, that hopefully are going to be like authentically participatory everywhere in the world. And we just have the privilege of getting to work with communities in Haiti, where in some ways that job is easier because we don't need to overcome a system that's already there, that's not clean and participatory. We get to use today's technologies, today's business models, the best things that we can think of, we can pull from global best practices and start from scratch in a way that can leapfrog to sort of better energy systems for these small communities.
Yeah, sounds good. And it was, I think, really interesting that you mentioned that it is like communities like in Haiti are like more willing to participate or more ready, while it is like a little bit difficult to overcome a system that is already established, like we see in like the modern cities. And I want to shift our focus a little bit to you and from the cities. And I know that in your house you did that and went completely electric. So can you tell us what are the challenges there, and how can we as individuals start to act in a more sustainable way? So what are like some of the actions that we could take to make our lives more sustainable, like you did?
Sure. Well, thanks. And I will say, like, I have a very long way to go. But next slide, please. And this will be a silly slide, but it's a bunch of fruit. And I think of this in two ways. One is we all live in systems that are very imperfect. And to struggle to make our own actions without problem would take all of our energy, right? And so I really think about what is the low-hanging fruit that we can do in our own lives while we're also pursuing, bigger solutions that change the systems. What can we do that's not going to consume all of our energy and life force in our own lives? Because it's really systems change that's going to solve this, right? But a piece of systems change is culture. And we do want to demonstrate with our own actions that, like, this stuff, this sustainability stuff, this caring for each other, all of this stuff is important. So how do we demonstrate that as a way to influence the culture, which is systems change? And I think that's really important because it can feel so overwhelming my family has a car. It's not an electric car. I hate that, but I'm also not going to change it right now because it's not an easy thing for my family to do right now. Hopefully very soon it will be, but it's an example of, yes, we went electric, and electrify everything is like so exciting and important. It's something that we can all plan for, but a lot of people have, they're renting, or a lot of people have like appliances that already exist, and to just like rip out a perfectly good appliance and put something else in can make sense, but it can involve a lot of dust and time and work. So we happened to be in a situation where we were changing a lot of things in our house anyway. And so that was the moment to plan. And I won't say it was easy, but it made it possible for us to work harder. And my husband gets a lot of the credit here, but to work harder with the folks who were helping us to swap everything out at that moment. So, if you plan for what you want to be, where you want to go, getting to all electric, getting to, whatever the goals are for sustainability, it's okay to not do everything immediately, even though there's this huge global urgency. We can't kill ourselves over the fuel of our water heater when when there are other things going on. But when you need to change your water heater, it's a good time to switch it out, and planning for making sure that there's a wire, like a wire that's leading to the water heater so it can be electric in the future is a good idea if you happen to be like, if there's an electrician in your home and you're putting up a new wall, right? Just like planning for the future, but seizing the low-hanging fruit. I also think of fruit in the context of composting. Like it's something that is easy enough to do in my house, and it's something that I can teach my kids. Is like, this is an important thing that we do, and we get to like feed the worm friends and learn about how we can, how interconnected everything truly is. How our food is soil, and the great cycles that exist.
Yeah, I think you mentioned some like really, really important things, that like planning and actually like making it real are very different things, and like the process in there is not like really easy, but we are actually learning from like leaders like you. And in YGA we give a lot of importance to like meeting and learning from like the experience of like what we call role models, who are inspiring leaders. So as my final question, I want to ask, what advice would you give to a young person who wants to follow your example? There are a bunch of people today listening to you, and we would like to hear your advice to us.
Well, first of all, I want to say that you guys are true leaders and inspiring to me. So I am inspired by and very excited about the community that you're building and the practice that you're cultivating. In terms of like career path, I always say it's so important to go to where the work is getting done, to like, get your hands dirty or talk to the people who are actually touching the stuff that's getting built. And just to dive in, get really deep into the details on something. You know, in college, before I did my Google search, I had a job where I was trying to make the vending machines more efficient. And like, I was behind the vending machines, which are disgusting. Like going behind, I'd recommend that you not go behind the Harvard vending machines, because I too was in Boston and it was dusty and dirty back there. But I learned so much of like the details of change when you're like actually climbing around and getting into the contracting process of, if you want to do this simple thing that would save the university energy, then it's actually this big contracting challenge, even though I know from personal experience that it's only like a 20-minute job that I could do, you know. So it was just like details matter. And the more you get into the details, the more you realize that those details are portable to other topics. Like the insights you get from really working on something in the details of it give you insights to how the world works, right? And I think the last thing I want to say is that the world works as it does because of a series of decisions and circumstances that happened before we arrived, right? Or are happening now. And I think that's been something that I didn't realize when I was in college. I thought that like the systems in place were there because they like were the best systems, because some smart people put them there. And it's just not true. Everybody's just, you know, doing the next thing. And some of them are super thoughtful and super altruistic, and some of them aren't. And it's good to ask questions and think about what systems should exist or could exist. And then figure out why those systems don't exist, work on that problem.
Sounds good. Thank you so much for sharing your story and also providing us with some insight and advice. Thank you so much for being here. It was amazing meeting you and discussing with you about like clean energy and your projects.
My total pleasure. I'm honored and thrilled to be part of this. Thank you so much. And my contact information is there if anybody wants to reach out and talk about microgrids or energy access or anything else. I'd be thrilled to hear from folks.